Perfect.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back once again for another fantastic virtual tasting. Here with you tonight, Rebecca Nelson, the wine club director at Becker Vineyards. Tonight, we have a great group to talk to you about a fabulous brand new release wine. So I hope you have the 2018 Culinaria poured in your glass and you've got that swirling. I'm always really excited every time when this comes out. We typically make one of these every year and it's a different blend every time. And so they're always fantastic. I'm always really excited when these ones get released. So I'm going to turn this over to the guys to get you guys started. Tonight, we have with us our winemaker, John Leahy. We also have Dr. Joseph Becker with us tonight and our general manager, Bret and Jon. So I'm going to turn it over to the guys to get you started on this fantastic brand new release wine. I hope you all enjoy it. Cheers.
Cheers, Rebecca. Thank you yet again. Stick around. We're going to be gossiping about the 2015 later in the broadcast. So, Joe, before we get started on this wonderful wine, would you have a few words to open it up for us?
Absolutely. One of the things I was thinking about is, a lot of as our hospitals get full, a lot of the surgeons and the nurses and the people that are continuing to do just regular care for people that don't have coronavirus, still putting themselves in the line. A lot of all the brave. Just to never forget all the brave healthcare professionals on the front lines. And with that said, I was thinking about my father was telling us, just to give you all, people out there 30 minutes of, some sort of relaxation. I was thinking about my father telling a story about La Pyramide restaurant in the Rhone Valley on Monday. And wonderful story. I know it means a lot to him, but John, I just have to say, when my brother and my uncle Robert, his brother, and I are not around to tease him about his stories, you always say exactly what we're thinking when we're not there. So I have to say I appreciate that.
Well, that's good. So you'll rescue me from the employment line when he fires me. Well, listen, I want to get right into it. And Bret, we're going to start with you, but I want to have everybody do a swirl, a sniff, and a taste right away. This Culinaria has been an absolute favorite of mine to make. It's absolutely no bars held as far as what goes into it any given year. So I get to play with a lot of different things. And this particular year, we've had a lot of nice different wines that you normally probably wouldn't pair together. The idea at the end is to specifically for the Culinaria event, but to go with our wonderful cuisine in and around the San Antonio area, and to really highlight the fact that Texas wines can pair with a wide variety of different foods. So, Bret, we've got 4 different vineyards in here. We've got Wilmeth, Farmhouse, Talent, and Canada. So give us taste. Then taste it. What do you get in the wine? Talk about where you think those wines are coming from, where those tastes are coming from.
Yeah, and I think that I always tell people this all the time, that the winemaking team has a lot of fun making these blends, especially when like this wine, like John just alluded to, that there is no restraint. They can grab anything that they want, and I do think that that's what makes them so fun and interesting every single year. But I think from these 4 vineyards, again, you guys have been with us forever. We've talked about the Canada, the Wilmeth, the Talent, and the Farmhouse vineyards, and again, this is kind of all those combined again. But I want to mention something real quick before I forget about it, because Joe was just talking about how much fun we have when we all travel together and all that kind of stuff, and I think John and I enjoy the most the fact that Robert can give your dad so much grief.
Oh, yeah.
And it's probably the stuff that we would be saying if we didn't think we were going to get fired, right?
Exactly. Oh my God. Oh, he is hysterical. We get him on Friday, so you guys have got to come back. So I guess it's next Friday, right? That he's coming.
Yeah,
next Friday. So, but
actually,
yeah.
let me just say a couple of things along those lines. My dream, and I told Dennis, would be to have his band do something like this. And people may or may not know that my father loves to play the washtub bass, and so the question would be whether or not we, because I'm sure somebody's hidden that from him. That would somebody be able to break that out and let him do this during a virtual tasting? But the other thing too to talk about is the if I could just spend a few minutes talking about Culinaria. So I know that we did an earlier virtual tasting with Susanna, and we had Jason Dady on. But just to remind people, Culinaria is a absolutely wonderful festival. It's put on in San Antonio every year. They've moved it to the fall, and they usually pick a wine region. One of their best years, they picked Argentina. So they had Argentine food, they had Argentine wine pairings, and it's one of the most educational experiences, food and wine wise, that you can get. And what I love about it is that San Antonio, people may or may not, has really become an incredible culinary center. We have a Culinary Institute of America. We have all kinds of wonderful chefs in our town, like Jason Dady or Thierry at the Grill or Andrew Weissman. And now we have wonderful Texas wine that we can pair with it. And so it was originally known as the New World Food and Wine Festival. And so we originally created this wine, interestingly, to actually be like a Cheval Blanc. It's not so much anymore, but the Cheval Blanc is the classic Cab Franc Merlot pairing. That's what it was early on, but it's evolved over time, and now it's got one of my favorite grapes in it, which is Zinfandel.
I love Zinfandel too, Joe, and you're absolutely right. Discovering the food in San Antonio is absolutely fantastic. And as far as the wash tub base is concerned, nobody's actually hidden it. We've stored it. We don't want that. I don't want the unholy hell that would be unleashed if somebody threw it away. So we can find it. And I think it would be fun to get Doc on there. It would be hilarious. So,
John, I'm sorry, I alluded your question a little bit. What I can really taste in this when I go back and look at the blend sheet, because I'm having to look over here on my notes, but
right.
But that farmhouse, I think the farmhouse Mourvedre in this, I'm getting a lot of it. Like I can taste it a lot, like going back to the cellar, even though it's only 15% of this. And then 20% Zin and the 20% Dolcetto from Jet's Vineyard.
Yep.
I think that Zin is something that, Joe and I talk a lot about Zins, I think, because I drink a lot of them. I don't necessarily think that a lot of the Zins that we get from here in Texas are ones that I think they're made like Zin-like. And they're great wines. I just wouldn't identify them varietal as Zinfandel. But we talked to Jed a lot about that. And that one year he got that Zinfandel, it was like picking jelly off the vine that we made that port.
That was excellent. That was 2017.
Yeah.
So that Zin, Tempranillo, and Touriga Nacional are making that 2017 port, which we haven't bottled yet. It's still in barrel. Do not tell Doc where it's at. Yeah. But yeah, there are a lot of really good grapes in here. We have also got the Tannat and the Cab Sav in this blend, and that was, for me, was kind of fun to use that Tannat in a, again, that's only 15% of the blend, but it really wraps around. We've got a lot of fruit-driven reds in there, and then we wrap that with a nice blanket of tannins from that Cab and the Tannat, and we get this beautiful wine.
I also think that I sound like a broken record. I don't know what it is about Jet's Vineyard, but I feel like the Zin has that same kind of darker fruit note that we get in a lot of his Cab too, and it's rich. It has that really nice mouthfeel, almost kind of a dark. I don't want to say raspberry, maybe a dark cherry or black cherry or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, it does, Joe, and what's funny is it really, for the last 8 years, it's kind of slowly crept up into my back of my mind that it's going to be very hard to do Zinfandel in Texas, to taste like a really dark, rich Zinfandel, and Jet's Fruit manages to get there. But it is a difficult grape to deal with, which is odd considering that it's a tough skin, a thick skin grape, but it is prone to splitting if you get late season rain. So it's it's a little more temperamental than like the Cabernet, which just is a workhorse grape all the way around. But that Zinfandel, when it comes in ripe, it does a beautiful job. Absolutely beautiful. So everybody, you guys are the first ones tasting this wine. This is our first release. So outside of the winery, you're the first folks tasting this. So I want to draw attention to that fact too, that we're first time ever we're doing a virtual release, first time release. That's kind of fun. Yeah. But another, the more this opens up, is anybody else, I get it's almost like an amyl acetate, like almost wants to be banana, but it suddenly turns into a much richer fruit note.
It's very subtle, John. Yes, it's almost like you get the sense of a very ripe, or not a very kind of a greener banana, and then maybe raspberry, blackberry, something like that.
Yeah, it is definitely a red fruit. I don't know if it's bramble. It is kind of brambly though, and I think that
Bramble.
coming in from that Zinfandel. But I also think it's offered, Mourvedre can offer some of those similar notes too.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of fun. I'm looking at my notes too. I keep looking down. I've been honest more than once. Don't look down while you're on the broadcast. I'm like, well, I'll just put the paper up here.
But I think a lot of that's coming. So here's the other weird thing. Like I could taste the Mourvedre. I think a lot of that flavor that that you're describing is coming from the Barbera from Talent, and then that Tannat from Talent. And I think that this is the first year that we used the Tannat. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, no. 2018. Yes. Yeah, it is.
Yeah. And I do think that the Tannat was something that we added, and we like to mess with some people in the wine world that were growing Tannat and thought that we were going to come in and buy every acre of it that was available in Texas. And my buddy, Mr. Rivenberg, I always say his name wrong, loves to give me a hard time about that time that we pretended like we were buying his contract on Tannat. But
funny.
Right. But I do think that adding that note of Tannat to this is what's making it so deep as well. But John, talk a little bit about that Tannat and the first time we used it.
Okay, but I'm gonna call kudos out to Jane. She just said, "What about figs?" And yeah, and there is a subtlety of the fig in there, but that Tannat. So Tannat, to me, when you taste it just as a ripe fruit, and we're talking about grape in the bin at 24 to 25 bricks, which in essence about 23 to 24% sugar, which is 2.5 times sweeter than a table grape. You would think it would just be uber sweet. Well, you get all those tannins out of there. Tannat is a tannin bomb, but it smells, oddly enough, during fermentation, it smells a little bit like Lipton instant iced tea. That very powerful edge that has that kind of very dry tannic edge. Not the Lipton iced tea with lemon powder, just the straight Lipton iced tea, but it does a nice job. The Tannat, when used as a blender and no more than 15%, it actually acts almost like a flavor enhancer for everything else in there. That tannin is great for lowering the oxidation and allowing those fruit notes to come forward. Binds up, so it allows the terpenes to really cleave out.
John, is it the terpenes that give it that very subtle banana that we're getting on the nose?
That's an acetate edge. That's actually a byproduct of aging and oxidation in barrel. We try very, very hard to keep it as fine or as small amount as possible. But that amyl acetate, that banana edge, is actually an oxidative fault, if you will. Not all faults are faults. Some faults we enjoy. Like there are some people, an entire country full of people who enjoy Brettanomyces. For the life of me, I don't know why. That's not actually true. So that wild yeast characteristic, we consider it a fault almost all the way through until it isn't. Same with Sauvignon Blanc, that extreme, those cool weather Sauvignon Blancs that are extremely grassy or almost cat-like. That's actually a sulfide fault, but people have come to enjoy it as an accent to the wine. So the same with the acetate. It's there, but it's also there in wines that age for a while too.
The other thing that I think is interesting, John, is that this is yet another full-bodied, wonderful, smooth mouthfeel red wine with, an alcohol of 14.9% that you wouldn't guess. I don't get almost any heat.
Yeah, I'm not
off the back of the palate.
Getting any alcohol vapors on the nose at all.
Yeah, amazing.
I think it's absolutely fantastic. So Bret, the Zinfandel. Back to that.
You want me to go on a rant about Zinfandel in Texas?
Yes.
And Barbera as well.
Yeah, right. No,
no, one at a time.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I only go on a few rants, but I really do think that Zinfandel is challenging to grow in Texas for a lot of different reasons. I think that the tightness of the cluster and our growing conditions really have a hard time with all that things that make it ripe. And I know that Dr. Becker gets mad at me sometimes because I compare to the Zins that I buy from other parts of the world. And he's like, yeah, but try this one. It's really good. But I do feel like that it's something that Jet does a good job with it. But I think as far as across the state, you're not going to find a lot of Zinfandels in plantings in Texas. And there's a reason for that. But then again, Jet does a great job with it when he can, based on what the weather is. I talked to him yesterday and he just, it's been 107, 110 degrees out there every day, and the wind's been blowing like crazy. There's varieties that are not going to be very happy with that, and whether Zen or Barbera or whatever it is. But that's also, I keep telling people this all the time. That's why growers that we deal with have so many different varieties in their vineyards, and they have this wide range of varieties that they can make a star out of one year, and then the other one may just kind of be average. So I'm not a big proponent of Zen in Texas. I'll just tell you. If somebody wants to plant it, go for it. But you need to grow it as good as Jet does to make it work.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a difficult grape to say the least, but that you brought up a point that I really, really like. So it is difficult, and any given year can be more difficult on certain varietals over others, or like this year, we're facing a severe shortage of fruit. The guys have to actually farm every year, and it's not, I'm not saying the West Coast folks don't have to, but they have enjoyed very even climate, the last several decades that allows them to really kind of count on, we're going to produce this over and over every year. What I like about this is some years I get handed a plate of, wow, that's a mixed bag, or I didn't quite get enough of this and I've got this, let me try blending here. What can I come up with? And I really enjoy that. It's actually winemaking. Every year should be different. Every vintage should have a unique story. And here in Texas, it does. That can be good and bad depending on whose perspective that's coming from. As far as when I'm in the cellar, it's a joy. You get to know like 2017 or 2018, and then you get to look forward to, this is going to be a difficult year. This is going to be a great year. There are different micro challenges around. I have to say, so we got on this particular year, vintage 2018 was a damn good follow-up to 2017. Not as uber ripe as 17, but a really good follow-up. This was great.
Because I remember you said that it was, and maybe you just said this, but we had that very kind of hot late spring, early summer. So the clusters were smaller, but you got much better fruit concentration, as I recall.
We did. And we got a lot of really good skin to juice ratio on that. I just got a question here just a minute or two ago about Angela said she was experiencing some sweetness in there on the nose, and to what fruit do we attribute that? Well, we've got Dolcetto and Barbera and Zinfandel, all three that are going to give those luscious red fruits. And I would say the combination, it's probably a point of where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
Mm-hmm.
All those combined together, giving that perceived sweetness, which is just the fruit-driven nose. When you taste it, it's dry on the palate, but it's very smooth on the palate too.
Hey, so I was looking over at my wall of grapes that's over here.
Yeah, I saw you did. I was wondering if you were looking at the chart.
Yeah. So, when we have our meetings and we're trying to talk about the next thing that's going to hit the door with harvest, which is going to happen next week for us. But
right
on my little chart here, it says that Tanat was 33 or 31.6 bricks when it came in.
Yes, it was.
So you want to talk about some, as my buddy McLean would say, boom shakalaka alcohol. That's where that fruit and that alcohol is probably coming from.
Yeah, the alcohol is driven from the Tanat, and I also believe that the Dolcetto came in rather high bricks too, didn't it?
Sometimes they're on here, sometimes they're not. So hold on.
But while Brett's looking, John, you talk about, front, middle, and back. Go ahead, Brett. I'll say it in a second.
Sorry, 26.2 was the Dolcetto.
Yeah, so we that's why I'm saying those combinations of those fruits are, and those higher alcohols definitely, at almost 15%. It's a powerhouse. I love Boom Shakalaka. We have to have him on the broadcast with his parents.
We're gonna have a whole new round of T-shirts when we get out of these virtual tastings.
Right.
Buy the pool wine and then Boom Shakalaka and all this other kind of fun stuff.
Exactly. But
I think, you know, like this is a wine that I think lights up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you know, front, middle, back. And I think I'm getting on the back palate, I'm getting almost an interesting, I know your notes say coffee, but it's maybe earth tone, or it's just a really nice, smooth, rich finish, almost kind of a flourish to it.
It does. Yeah, absolutely. It does. So somebody just asked bricks with a question mark. So I'm assuming you're asking what are bricks, and not what the bricks were. The bricks were pretty high. So bricks is a measurement of soluble solids. For me, it translates to percent sugar, though it's not an exact translation. So when I say 24 degrees bricks, that's measuring the soluble solids, of which about 92 to 94% of that is sugar. There's some other things in there that can disrupt it. If you have too much grape skin in that juice sample, it's going to read a little higher on the bricks. We usually spin our juice samples down in a centrifuge and then take a more accurate reading. But for general rule of thumb purposes, bricks are how we measure the sugar ripeness in the fruit before harvest. So champagne loves 17 to 18 bricks. That's great for dry champagne. A good light white table wine loves 22 to 24 bricks. A really heavy red wine loves 24 to 26 bricks. Anything above that, and you're starting to talk about, one, higher alcohol, of course, but two, much more concentration on the uber ripe fruit end on those flavors. So.
But John, I always use bricks. I mean, not so much bricks, but the alcohol in a bottle to kind of give myself a little intuitive layer about how ripe it was when they picked it. And so, like, if you're out and about tasting, what is the correlation? About 24.5 bricks makes 13.5% alcohol. Is that right?
I actually use and I'm going to grab my calculator for this. So my rule of thumb when I'm out in the vineyard is I'll take the bricks and multiply it by about 0.58. So you said 24.5?
Yeah.
Times 0.58, it's 14.2.
Okay. So 20, yeah.
Low is 0.55.
Yeah.
And that'll put it at 13.9.
But imagine somebody sitting in a tasting room and they're tasting a Cabernet that they're like, man, this tastes green. Why is it so green? And they flip it over and they look at the alcohol and it's 12%. Well, that's because it didn't get ripe enough, and that's why it tastes green, right? And I do use that as kind of a little, like maybe a check and balance if I'm out tasting at other places. And then at the same time, you could get one that's 15.2, and as Joe was alluding to, it tastes too hot and it's going off on that other side. So,
well, and I've had several of my contemporaries tell me that no matter what, they pick a 22.5. This is grapes at 22.5, no matter what. And I'm like, yeah, you're not doing yourself or the grape any justice. You got to go for the grape and what it's saying. That's great that we have the numbers, but why are you doing that? Are you just worried about higher alcohol? Is that it? Is that the straight answer? That is not a level playing field at all. That's a one-sided thought. So we have developed, and through Bret's constant haranguing of the growers, no, but we've developed as an organization very good relationship with those growers, and they have come to understand why we want those numbers where they're at, if possible. So we've made acquiescence to weather and to different situations where we've taken them in, but if we can see those numbers and taste that berry, and we know that it's getting to that point where we really want it, where I really think that it's going to do well, that's when we'll take it in. I really don't care too terribly much about the final alcohol.
Right.
John, do you remember?
Go ahead.
Do you remember last year the Mauvage contract that somebody left on? They walked on, and
yeah.
And I went up to Lubbock and tasted the fruit, and I called you and I said, hey, I might be completely missing this, but to me this tastes good. It's at 23.5 to 23.8. We'll pick it in a couple days. And the other winery actually walked on the contract for about 40 tons or 20 tons of it, and we brought it home, and it's pretty lights out in the cellar. So that was
it's in barrel right now, aging beautifully. So thank you very much. We won't mention names, but absolutely happy to take advantage of that. But
right.
Then again, I might have some problems understanding Texas grapes. So Joe, what were you going to say?
No, I was just going to say, one thing that's fun about these wines is, as Robert Mondavi told my father early on, you want people to feel like that you're their winemaker, and I think to take that a step forward, it's fun for people to have a sense of who these grape growers are. And I'm chuckling because, John, you always say, when we ask you to make a specific wine a specific way, you always say, I'll talk to Mother Nature. And I feel like all of our growers have a different relationship with Mother Nature. Miss Canada sings to them. Jets kind of scares her with his pickup truck. But at the end of the day, she's gonna do what she wants.
Yeah, it does scare her with her. Yeah, absolutely. It's Mother Nature and the extraordinarily almost inhuman dedication that these folks are showing in their vineyards. I mean, you get the farmhouse guys, Anthony and Nick, that are, they're 24/7. You get Steve Newsom, who is absolute gem to deal with. His sarcasm and dry humor are pretty good, especially when he and Bret start bantering back and forth. That's my favorite. But I remember a few years back, Bret, you remember we went to look at the grapes and he insisted on giving us a jalapeno vodka martini to walk through the vineyard.
Yeah.
Buddy, I can't.
Yeah, it's all work and no play if we're looking at grapes in Lubbock, right?
Right. Yeah.
Steve, if you're out there, where's mine?
Yeah. No. I got a bottle of vodka with some horseradish root in the freezer. So somebody asked, so you give certain parameters to the vineyards, and Bret, why don't you explain just a real brief overview?
If I could flip my head down and show you how there's no hair, that's the brief overview.
Yeah. So we.
No, we do have long-term contracts with our growers. Usually we sign a 5-year contract, and there are very strict parameters in that. And if a new grower came into the winery today and said, I want to grow for you, I hand them this contract and I said, this is very simple. It's about 4 pages. But we are the hardest people to deal with on the planet when it comes to these parameters. If you can make them, we'll buy the grapes. If you can't, we won't. And I do think I talked about this on an earlier deal, that our growers buy into our program. They love the fact that we spare no expense when it comes to the barrels. We spare no expense when it comes to the yeast that John and Rachel get to buy. And I signed that ticket.
$18 worth.
Yeah, right. I think it was 60,000 last time, wasn't it? That's what I remember. I don't know.
It's not all yeast.
But I think that them buying into this, and that's part of this being the growing aspect of grapes in Texas. And I'm gonna like kick on this part is, other regions of the world we try to compare ourselves to. We are Texas. We want to make Texas wine. They deal with nothing compared to what we deal with. I challenge anybody from any other region in the world to come here and try to grow. Just come on and see if you can figure it out. That's the number one thing, is there is no normal. It can be tamed, but there is no normal.
Why did I just suddenly get a vision of a bunch of Aussies coming over here?
Yeah, all right.
We get a freeze every 4 or 5 years, or we get a hot, hot summer. Yeah, hail.
Lack of hellacious winds. That'll shut a grapevine down quick and respiration stall. It'll rip things up. Yeah, and it's a windy, sunny day, and then there you go, a day lost in ripening. Jet told me that he loves to talk to Carolyn, Dad's sister, about weather, because you could just talk forever about Texas weather, but how unpredictable it is. And yeah. Well, I tell you right now, Brenda Canada already has that in the can. It doesn't matter what weather is heading towards her. It goes around her if it's bad, stays if it's nice.
Or it has to contend with her vineyard manager.
Yeah, exactly. Man grows a green onion, great onion. So so that I want to just touch before we get too carried away here, which I think I already have. Oh, good. Hey. So don't know if you can see my friend. She decided to join us.
She's got good taste.
Yeah. She's a nice little tortoiseshell cat. So everybody should have a crazy tortie in their life once in a while. Anyway, what I want to talk about real briefly is, Joe, why Culinaria? How did you guys get involved?
Gosh, I think Mom and Dad got involved very early on when it was still called the New World Wine and Food Festival, and I think just like I went away when I came back from my medical training. It's amazing how the culinary scene in San Antonio had taken off, and I think that partially thinking about the Food and Wine Summit with, you know, Tom Perini and, you know, thinking that, and Fess Parker, you know, trying to, how can we elevate the food and wine palette in this part of the world? Because we felt, you know, my parents felt like that it was really growing, you know, from a wine standpoint. I think we caught it at the right time. We caught it at a time when people were going from, you know, more spirits to more wine. And so I think that we wanted to get, you know, bring that love of food and wine, that art to San Antonio. And so initially it was the New World Wine and Food Festival, and then it was Culinaria. And so I think it's, you know, it's just a combination of trying to raise the level of the palate for food and wine around here. Trying to bring great winemakers, great chefs in.
Yeah, it's a fun little festival, and I hope we'll have a chance to participate again this year if it doesn't get closed down. But you know, we've been doing it every year since I've been here, and I know a lot longer than that. So, but for me, it's always been wonderful. I really think, you know, of Culinaria as grumpy as I got last year about it being in the middle of harvest. And I'm like, really? We just, you know, for the wine part, you know, maybe a week later. But the absolute dedication of those folks, but the fact that it really focuses in on foods and San Antonio food scene, and it's wonderful. And it's a wonderful organization for what they do on their you know, NPO side, and how they help a lot of folks. So.
And it's you know, just so people, if I'm sure most of our audience is familiar with it, but it's, you know, it's 4 or 5 days. The first couple days, there'll be some nights at some local restaurants where they have, if they're, you know, like I said earlier, or one year they brought wine in from Spain. There was a great dinner at Francesca's, which used to be the restaurant at La Cantera, where Bret and Chris and Mom and Dad and I were there, and they had the Miguel Torres wines come in, and Miguel Torres came and talked about his wine. It was paired with our wine, and then there's a couple day of panels. It's a very educational, wonderful experience.
It is absolutely. Okay, speaking of food, Bret.
Well, I'm not gonna say anything that's gonna steal anybody's thunder, because I think this wine goes with everything. I swear to God. Like, I mean, you could take this as like a 5-pronged approach, right? So you take each one of the different varieties in this, and you can kind of go after it. I've had this wine, and John, when we say we're making a food friendly wine, that's why I'm saying that this is my vote. It goes with pork, it goes with quail, it goes with beef, it goes with chicken. Like, it just goes with a lot of things. So
Right.
I'm not gonna pick one, because I want to eat all those.
Yeah. Nice. Okay, so Joe, what do you have?
So I have two thoughts, because one of them just occurred to me. You know, initially, you know, just thinking about the San Antonio culinary scene, I actually think this would be very nice with like a carne guisada. But you know, my dad has a brother, Robert, sister Carolyn. Both, you know, Carolyn's a wonderful cook, but Robert is also a wonderful cook. And one year, was visiting him in Chicago, and on Memorial Day, he made a strawberry rhubarb pie, which I think would, you know, with some of the darker notes on this, you know, strawberry is an interesting pairing with Cabernet. I think that would be fun to try.
Oh, that would be excellent to try. So I'm gonna, you know, a little chicken mog, which is it's just bell peppers, stewed chicken over rice, which is really good. I was thinking about that, but you know, Bret, you say that, and you're not wrong. It is like a 5-prong approach. This wine does very, very well with lamb, and I'm fully prepared for people to make fun of me over it because I say lamb all the time at the winery. But what it also does well with, what I've had this with, and I had it down at Culinaria, was with a black bean burger with roasted poblano salsa. Oh my God, that was excellent. It was absolutely fantastic. So
I can honestly tell you, I think that the 15 portion of this, I probably consumed half of it, like the Bluebell thing. You know, eat what you can and sell the rest.
Right.
And this 18 was in the tank out here, and I think in the afternoons, you know, it was like, well, you know, what do I want to try for the evening? And it was always, the Culinaria, because I think I swear it goes with everything. And
Yeah.
I have not had something that it hasn't, and that's just my experience.
It does go very, very, very well with a whole lot of different things. I think you just need to experiment out. And it actually, oddly enough, it holds up to mild to moderate spicy, which is really interesting.
Right.
And, so, the world is your oyster. So we had one question from about 10 minutes ago. It said, not now, but at the end. What are we all? They want each one of us to answer, so we will. What is your favorite wine that you make, regardless of vintage? What was your favorite wine, regardless of vintage? Anything after 2012 is fine. So Joe, what's been your favorite wine?
Quite honestly, and this is way pre 2012. But in 2005, before I went off to start residency in Connecticut, the night before I flew out, my father opened a bottle of our 97 estate cab, and it was pretty incredible. I mean, it had some older Bordeaux notes. That bottle of wine has always stood out to me. I don't know if it's nostalgia, but it was a great bottle of wine.
Fantastic. Bret, what about you?
So I'm going to turn into a bit of a politician.
Really?
In the fact that, number one, we take care of the grapes here. I honestly don't have one. I mean, if you put a gun to my head and said pick one, I could do it. But I do tell this story a lot, because on the library tours that we do on Saturday, the number one question I get is that question. So whoever wrote it, kudos. That is very popular. But I always tell people it's like my children. It depends on how they're acting. And that's a real answer, because the wines change so much. But, from the backstory, we love to give John a hard time because he came along in 2012. Most of us pick anything from 2009 is fabulous. But I do remember, like, for me, the nostalgia of the 2007 Raven. I love that wine. It was something new that kind of came to be, but I can't say that it's my favorite, because I don't really have, I have so many. So
damn good wine. Yeah, you're right. 07 was a damn good wine.
And John, if I were to throw in a second place, it would definitely be the wine formerly known as Raven from 2014 that won the double gold.
Yeah, I really think that not just being technically a great wine, but I think there is an awful lot going into your favorite wine is an awful lot of memory and nostalgia.
Yes.
What was going on, who you were with, what you were doing. That really goes well. One of my favorite answers to this question was given by the old Baron Rothschild when he was asked at the CIA during an event. He said, "What was your favorite wine that you all have produced?" And he goes, "Oh, go through the panel and give me a minute." He's like, "I'm getting a little older. I need to think about this." That man could lead you, hook you, and reel you in. He was awesome. At the end, he said, "I don't remember the vintage, but I was 17 and it was a bottle of rosé and I was in the barn with this young lady." So, it really, what it just basically encapsulates is the fact that wine is so much a part of what you're doing. That's why I tell people a glass of wine with a meal when you're sharing with friends, it shouldn't be the focal point, but it should definitely be when it's a really great wine, you're suddenly like, oh, did we finish this? That to me is the best compliment a wine can absolutely get. So, all right. So we got our food pairings, everything else. Bret, besides Friday in the 2015, what are we doing next week?
It's all the Dolcettos. I'm looking at my sheet here again. So we get to try the Dolcetto that's in this by itself on Monday, which again is pretty stellar on its own. So the 15% that's in this blend is also bottled by itself for Monday. And then the 17 and then the 15, which is the first year we ever made Dolcetto.
Yep.
And there's a fairly good chance we're going to be doing some kind of co-broadcasting on one of those nights from the actual Lubbock or Brownfield area, because we're going to try to jump up there. At least I will be going. And then the next week, I was looking at this since Joe referenced the 14 Raven. The next week has got 18 Petite Syrah, a library release of Chivot 14.
Ooh.
And then the 14 Raven on Friday. So,
oh boy,
yeah, that's a pretty good pack. So
that is going to be a good pack.
That's going to be fun.
Okay. Well, everyone, I'm glad you all joined us for another broadcast. I hope we got some of your questions answered. No matter what you choose a glass of wine and a smile and share it with someone that you enjoy. So that's the perfect glass. So here's to everyone.
Cheers to that.
Good health and great wine.